John coming to you from Evolve Custom Rod Shop, showing you a completely new system. This is the Rod Builder's Kit by Rodteck. This is a completely different system. This is a way of putting on guides which is like no other. You're putting guides on via carbon fiber tape. You have to almost forget about what you learned on guides and how to put them on a rod. You can see here I have all my guides marked on this matrix blank. It's an ultralight blank, so it's really lightweight. Plus, it's a two-piece, so it's going to be really important that I get my marks right. This Renzetti lathe has an indexing pin, so I have it indexed at 12 o'clock. This is going to really help me out, especially when I'm putting the guides on the rod. It's going to make lining them up a lot easier. So let me show you what comes in this kit. It's basically everything you need to do it. Comes with instructions, comes with a tech tip. Of course, it comes with a sticker. Pretty awesome. Love stickers. Anyway, you got your UV epoxy. They call it liquid plastic. Don't be alarmed by it. Liquid plastic. It's a UV epoxy. You have your two-part epoxy for putting on the guide feet. You have a little sandpaper block, some mixing sticks, some alcohol wipes, and a UV light. Everything's ready to go. It actually came with batteries too for the UV light, which was kind of neat. So you can basically, with this kit, build a few rods and, move on, order more supplies as needed. Again, I'll put the link in the description on where to get the stuff. By the way, I'm not paid by the manufacturer. I was really intrigued by the system. He sent the kit out to me, and now I'm going to show you how I use it in my shop. This might not be the same way you use it, and that's fine. It's not really about that. It's about building a rod that catches fish. I'm using the microwave air guides on this BFS rod. It's a new line of rods I'm developing specifically for light bait casting. The microwave air guides work perfect for this. Keeps costs down. The guide works great for casting. So now we're going to do the two-part epoxy. This is a guide foot epoxy. This sounds weird, but the carbon fiber tape that you're putting over the guide, your traditional epoxy will not penetrate that the way it needs to adhere the foot to the guide, to the blank, the guide foot to the blank. So what we're doing here is like almost like security, and there's nothing wrong with that. We do security loops on normal micro guides anyway. The second part of the epoxy, the white part of the epoxy, which has the blue label, take your time with this, and sometimes you need to stick a toothpick or something up there to free it up. This stuff likes to harden a little. The other thing is once it starts moving, it comes out quick, so take your time. And then once you're done, pull it back a little. That way it recedes back into the tube a little. That'll help you next time you open it. It's only on the white, not the black, which is the blue, not the orange. You're mixing equal parts. Basically, just mix it together. You're trying to get it's not going to really turn gray like other epoxies. It's just going to kind of tone down the color a little and be less bright, you could say. We'll continue mixing for 15, 20, 30 seconds, whatever it takes till you feel confident that everything is together and you don't have any of one part or the other left over. Once this is all mixed up, you can set it to the side while you grab your guides and we get ready for guide placement. First thing we're going to do is right under my China marker, I'm going to just sand the blank ever so slightly. All I'm doing is the epoxy is going to adhere to a scuff surface. You don't want to gouge the blank or anything. You're just scuffing the surface is all you're doing. That's going to allow that epoxy to hold a lot better. See, I just take the little mixing stick, put it on the bottom of the guide, and press down. That's essentially it. That's what I do. That's how I put these guides on. The micro guides are light enough to where the surface tension of the epoxy will hold these guides in place for the most part. Towards the top of the rod where it gets really skinny, I had a little trouble with one until the epoxy set up enough to where it was staying still. And in my tips and tricks, I'll show you things you can do that the manufacturer recommends to help with this. I just find this is the easiest way. I basically put all the guides on the rod. I glue every single one on. Once they're all glued on, I make sure they're aligned. The epoxy, I was told, is a quick epoxy. It doesn't take long to set up, but I would probably say it's 10-15 minutes in my opinion. Now, temperature can change that. You can see I have all the guides on now. They're all lined up. I've been doing this long enough to know how guide alignment should be, especially with this rod lathe. It's so easy because, number one, you have the indexer. Number two, you can get a good visual on where the rod is. Also, you know that everything is true on this with the guide placement in reference to the stanchions which hold the rod blank in place. So everything is where it needs to be. And I'll double check this. In fact, I double checked the tip a few times because right there at this ultralight tip, of course, there's not much surface there for have surface tension. So what ends up happening is it might move a little bit on you when the viscosity is really loose on that epoxy, but as it hardens up, you can usually get it right where you need to. Now we get on to wrapping the guide. And you can see here, I actually let these guides sit for a while. This has actually been 3 or 4 hours. Usually you can go like 30 minutes to an hour is what I like to do. You don't necessarily have to wait that long. You can do, I mean, you can theoretically wrap this right away. My thing is, it's a lot easier for me if I know that epoxy is partially cured or all the way cured. Now you grab your C-tape. C-tape has two sides to it, the white and the yellow. The white is the underside, the yellow is the top layer. Basically what that does is protect the carbon fiber from breaking down over time. It's just a protective layer. You're going to grab some nice sharp scissors. What I like to do and what the instructions tell you to do is start at the bottom of the blank. And there's a reason for this. The other thing you want to do is this first wrap, you want to make sure you go over that tag end. I can't stress that enough. If you don't go over the tag end, you might have a piece of carbon tape that kind of pokes up out. And to prevent that, you just wrap over top of it, and then you won't have that issue. And then when you move up the guide, you're basically just going at an angle, you know, and you're kind of like a candy cane. You're wrapping this thing up until you get to the top of the guide foot. And then what you do is, again, you do a complete revolution back onto itself. Believe it or not, there's a little bit of stickiness to the top of this carbon fiber tape, and you'll be less likely to have a loose end if you do it that way. So once you get to where you're done wrapping, I like to, you can see here, nip it right before the end, and then fold it over with my finger. If you ever have it stick up, they say in the instructions you can add a little bit of the liquid plastic and cure it real quick. That's fine. You can do that. I find it easier just to show you something that I did on the next guide where I did have a tag end that was sticking up a little. I think it's a much easier way to approach it. Now that we have the guide on, I'm going to take my my pull through and take off my China marker. So everything's in place, it's wrapped, it's ready to be epoxied. Again, their epoxy is called liquid plastic. Don't be alarmed by this. If you think about what epoxy is, it's just some sort of plastic. So by calling it liquid plastic it's basically epoxy. It's a it's a UV cure epoxy. You'll see here, I'll get to my second guide. Put my second guide on. I'm only doing a couple guides here for you. No sense in showing you too much. Once you do one or two guides, you get the hang of this, and it's pretty simple. The first guide's going to be the hardest. One thing I'd like to advise is do not, under any circumstances, if the tape were to get twisted or bound together, cut it off and start over. Otherwise, it will not look right once you finish. You really want to lay it as flat as possible on the blank and on the guide foot. The first guide I ever did with this stuff, I had it bunched up a little, and it worked fine, but it just didn't look right. And I was not really happy with it. And, you know, there's no point in putting on more material than you have to. And when it bunches up, you end up putting more material on. Cut off my tag ends. Do not cut those tag ends short. They are a pain to get off the tape. So it's very important you cut them a little bit long. That way, you can pull them off the tape, because if you cut it flush with the tape, you'll know my fury with that. So, moving on, we're going to put the liquid plastic on. And again, guys, it's called liquid plastic, but it's a UV cure epoxy. One tip that was given to me, which I can't stress enough, is put this in hot water prior to putting it on. You need to loosen up the viscosity of it. If you try and put it on at 60, 65 degrees, it's not going to level the way you want it to. You really need to put it on at warmer temperatures. It's going to go on so much smoother. And you do just light layers. And you can see there, I just used the UV light and cured it up. I'm adding a second layer here to fill in any gaps, kind of make it more even. It really doesn't take much. Once you get the hang of this stuff, I'm still trying to get the hang of it. The biggest advantage you have is make sure you have that in warm water to loosen the viscosity up. It lays out so much better if it's warm. I'm actually going to get one of those cup warmers. I had one and it actually stopped working. I need to get a new one, because if I put a coffee cup with a little bit of water in it and have that turned on, it will always be at the right temperature, and I can just keep that little bottle of liquid plastic inside the warm water, and that'll help it go on. And you can see here that I'm working on the second guide. That first guide's done. It's wrapped. It's ready to go. It's cured. That's it. They do say to wipe it off when you're done with a alcohol pad. I do that once I'm completely done with the rod. I wipe everything off, and I know the epoxy is cured completely, and what that'll do is get anything off. See here, I have a little carbon fiber tag end. It may not be super visible. I also am going to get my China marker off, which I didn't do initially. The reason I like to do this before I use the epoxy is so I don't epoxy over the China marker. But anyway, at any rate, you see this little tag end here. I'm just going to grab a razor blade just like you would with thread. I've made a video on this. I'll put a link up here that shows how to get rid of tag ends. Very important. It's not that difficult. It's just part of rod building, okay? And you got to work with what you got. Take the razor blade, just cut it smooth and level. Once you have it smooth and level, you just add a little bit more of that UV liquid plastic, and you're good to go, and you're level again, and it's super easy. I find this to be the easiest way of doing it. You see I'm smooth. I'm going to pull my liquid plastic out of the warm water and just go to town. Add a little bit more, get it all even, and cure it up. You can see here I left a little bit more China marker on. I want to get that off before I put the final coat of this liquid plastic on. You see I'm speeding this up because, you know, there's plenty of videos out there on how to wrap guides and how to put on epoxy. UV cure, there it is. Sometimes if the layer is thicker, you're going to have to hold that UV light a little longer. Don't be alarmed by that. But essentially, I just wrapped and sealed 2 guides. They're ready to go. You can see here they look really awesome. The biggest benefit with these is, from what I understand, when you paint over them, it works a lot better. By the way, I'm going to have a painting video coming up on painting rod blanks and what I think of it. Here's a bonus section, the tips and tricks video. Basically, what I'm showing you here is tips and tricks that might help maybe somebody who's new to rod building, wants to try this out, doesn't have a whole ton of experience. This might help you out. What I do is I use the light line for my LED light. That gives me a straight line right down my blank. And I can use that to align my guides, and then I look over top of it and make sure that it's centered to the blank. If you want to do it a different way, some people are going to do this one guide at a time, and that's perfectly fine. Everybody has their own way of doing things. What you can do is put a piece of tape on where you're going to put the base of the guide and a piece of tape on the top of the guide foot, and then use a pen and just mark it on the blank. That way you know, and you can make sure all those marks are centered. You can take a straight edge. You can do all kinds of things before you even put the guides on. And that way you align the guide foot to those lines. Very effective. I did that on the first rod and it worked fine. It's also, you know exactly where you can sand on the blank. You can do just the bottom of the foot. You can do the whole blank. You know, put the tape all the way down the blank and put all your guide feet on at the same time like I did. Just be aware that, you know, there is a setup time on this epoxy. And if you're in a warm room, it may set up quickly. Once you have the guide foot on with the adhesive underneath the guide foot, another thing they suggest doing is putting a piece of carbon fiber tape over top of the guide foot. This will help hold it down. And to be honest with you, if my blank was a little bit bigger, I probably would do this. But unfortunately, it's almost cumbersome to try and put a piece of tape on a guide foot on a blank so small. So I chose not to do that. But on a bigger blank, this might be super handy. I may or may not use that on a bigger blank, but that's also an option. Once you have it taped down, you just put the carbon fiber tape right over that carbon fiber tape that's holding down the guide. You're not going to cause any harm. You're just going to have some more carbon fiber under there. Guys, I hope you found this video cool. All the links will be in the description. Please like and subscribe. You guys will, I got a ton of stuff coming out. Thanks for watching.